very nice to see you all. The format of the evening will be the same as we normally have it. We will do the opening dedication of offerings, followed by taking the Refuges and Precepts. There's a lot in those Refuges and Precepts, and I personally like to chant them very much in Pali. It's the language that connects us with the historical Buddha, and I think just realizing that there's been a tradition in place for so many thousands of years, 2,653 years, I believe, since the Buddha was born. It creates a sense of connection, not just between ourselves, but between us and previous generations who've been inspired by the Buddha's teachings. The Buddha's teachings are really quite exceptionally wonderful. And I'm not saying that just as a devoted Buddhist practitioner, but I think just quite objectively. Their appeal to our intelligence, to our own capacity to become awakened is both very inspiring, and to have the pointing out instructions that he gave us is just amazingly helpful, which is why he's regarded in such high esteem in this particular tradition. I think it's always important to relate a tradition to one's own immediate experience. And although we're separated by so many centuries and by a language which might feel a bit strange, what is amazing is how pointed and how apropos his pointing out instructions are as to what to notice. He always said that all he was doing was pointing out what to do, how to do it, but never couldn't do it on our behalf. We have to do that ourselves. And a class such as this basically is putting that into practice. So the format of the evening will be very much in line with previous formats. We will take the Refuges and Precepts. We'll then sit for about 30 minutes or so, just allow ourselves to be still for a bit and, as it were, disengage a little bit from our daily preoccupations. I will then offer some reflections and actually read a question that I received today, which I found very interesting and stimulating. And then we'll open up and see what people have to contribute or say themselves. So you may have noticed you've all been muted. That's because I will be chanting the dedication of offerings and the Refuges and Precepts. If we all do it together with unmuted, then it's a real cacophony of noise. So to avoid that, you can just join in as you wish. If you have a shrine, you can bow to the shrine. Otherwise, you can do it in your whatever position you're in, seated, or perhaps in some cases even lying down, who knows. So Marlon will very kindly put up the page, which is page 18, Dedication of Offerings. And I'll ring the bell. And we'll just start with the chant. Yoso Bhagava Araham Samma Sambuddho Swakato Yena Bhagavata Dhammo Supatipanno Yasa Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Tamayam Bhagavantam Sadamam Sasangham Imehi Sakare Hiyataraham Aropitehi Apipuchayama Sadhuno Bhante Bhagava Suchira Parini Bhutopi Pachima Janatanukampamanasa Ime Sakare Dugatapanna Karabhute Patiganhatu Amhakam digaratam hitaya sukaya araham samma sambuddho bhagava buddham bhagavantam abhivademi. Swakato bhagavata dhammo dhammam namasami. Supatipanno bhagavato sāvaka sangho sangham namami. We chant the preliminary homage on page 20. Annamayam buddhasa bhagavato pugava ganamakaram karamase. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Turn to page 128. And that will be the third paragraph down, the Buddham. Buddham saranam gacchami, Dhammam saranam gacchami, Sangham saranam gacchami. Dutiyampi Buddham saranam gacchami, Dutiyampi Dhammam saranam gacchami, Dutiyampi Sangham saranam gacchami. Tatiyampi Buddham saranam gacchami, Tatiyampi Dhammam saranam gacchami, Tatiyampi Sangham saranam gacchami. We go to the 5 precepts, we'll determine those in Pali and in English. Panatipata veramani sikhapadam samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from taking the life of any living creature. Adhimadana veramani sikhapadam samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from taking that which is not given. Kamesu me chachara veramani sikhapadam samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from sexual misconduct. Musawada veramani sikhapadam samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from lying. Surameraya majja pamadatana veramani sikhapadam samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from consuming intoxicating drink and drugs which lead to carelessness. Imani pancha sikhapadani silena sugatim yanti, silena bhogasampada, silena nibutim yanti, tasma silam visodaye. These are the 5 precepts. Virtue is the source of happiness. Virtue is the source of true wealth. Virtue is the source of peacefulness. Therefore, let virtue be purified. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. In determining the 5 precepts, we're really reminding ourselves of the actual basic platform of personal and interpersonal relationships. One which is based on truth, on respect, and on kindness. And it's really the basis of all practice. It's a reflection of our relationship to the universe, to the world, as we experience it. And if we do just that, then we're creating incredibly good conditions for ourselves in terms of healthier mental well-being, emotional well-being, and as well physical well-being, because of course by living by values which are respectful to ourselves and to others, we're creating conditions which are conducive to health and harmony. And just on a very basic psychological level, they're good. But they also allow and provide us with a platform from which we can make a deeper inquiry into life, into our experience of life, into our experiences. Because the Buddhist tradition is essentially one of inquiry, investigation, although there is a strong devotional component. For many of us in the West who tend to be a bit skeptical, critical perhaps, it's something that often comes later in the path when we've actually found out the benefits of what the path has to offer for ourselves. We start developing an emotional relationship with the tradition. And the feeling that really comes up again and again is that because it's encouraging universal feelings of well-being, we respond to that with a sense of gratitude and an inner sense of well-being, which expresses itself in a devotional attitude, not blind faith, but one based on experience. There's nothing nicer than meeting a good person, irrespective of what tradition they're in. Good people elicit good responses. And so in terms of one's own practice, leading a good life tends to help others as well as oneself, and mitigates the unnecessary suffering that unwholesome states of mind, action, and words can generate. So of course, central in Buddhist practice is sitting quietly. We sit quietly so as to temporarily withdraw a little bit from external stimulation, external data, external input of information. We spend so much of our time focusing on the outside world because we have to. We live in a conditioned realm which we can't ignore. If we ignore, we do so at our peril. So avoiding dangerous situations, keeping ourselves safe on the physical level, fulfilling our duties and obligations where our previous actions or experiences may have put us, is very much part of life, having to navigate the circumstances we find ourselves in. And we know how beneficial and how healthy it is to switch off from the outside world and just give our poor, overactive minds and our overactive hearts a bit of respite, a bit of a break. And then explore our inner experiences, which we often don't have much time to notice. So there's a sort of reflective, inner focused attention, which is very much part of our practice, of our inquiry. So we'll sit now for 30 minutes or so in silence. I might just say a few words every now and then in case people might benefit from a reminder as to where they are. And it's always important to have a comfortable posture. So whether you're sitting on a chair or sitting on a cushion, it's always good to have a posture which is conducive to a good flow of energy. So straightening the back, making it nice and upright, and then just relaxing the muscles around this upright posture. And taking one or two, or even three perhaps, slightly deeper in-breaths, and just allowing oneself to relax on the exhalation. And then pause at the end of the exhalation for 2 or 3 seconds. And doing that 3 times, it's just a gentle putting on of brakes, a slowing down. It kickstarts the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the physiological response that a longer out breath than a pause can generate. This puts us into a regenerative mode of being. And just noticing the transition from the sound of a voice to the silence in between the words. And noticing that the silence behind all noise is constant. It's there all the time. So whatever sounds we might be hearing are in the context of silence. Silence of the present moment. It's inevitable that thoughts will arise. So we just notice them and don't hold on to them. Just let them come and then come back to body sensations, come back to the breathing. Just let them be. Hopefully we're all in a safe place so we can relax, put our guard down, and just allow ourselves to be permeated by the stillness and the silence of wherever we might be. And if there isn't much silence because you're beside a main road or there are other people somewhere in the house talking or making a noise, just stay with the sensation of breathing, sensation of the body. And whatever reactions are being experienced, just notice them arise. You can say to yourself right now, it's just like this. Silence and stillness are like water and sun for a plant. We don't have to go anywhere, do anything, be anybody. All we're doing is cultivating our capacity to attend and be present to whatever we're experiencing. aware of our present moment experience. Aware of our present moment experience. So we take a minute or two and reorient ourselves using the frame of reference of the four foundations of mindfulness. We observe how we feel in the body, the sensations in the body, having sat for 30 minutes in silence. Notice the quality of those sensations. In most cases, they'll be hopefully pleasant ones. A bit of calmness, a bit of peace and quiet, the body. Let's stop rushing from one place to another. We can observe our mind state, our general feeling state in terms of the mind. Perhaps slower, clearer, calmer. And our thought processes will also have changed. The sankharas arising in the mind will also be different. One of the key transformative practices in the Theravada tradition is observing the impermanence of all phenomena, noticing the constant change in states of mind, states of feeling, states of sensations. So whenever we go through a transition from one modality of being to another, we can notice the difference. So just paying attention to our experience and using our memory, comparing it so we can evaluate the benefit of what we've been doing. In terms of what I was going to reflect on this evening, I wasn't sure, and then I received an email this morning from one of our group, which I thought might be interesting to look at the points raised. One thing about these classes, which is so good, is that we have a variety of perspectives, a variety of teachers. So who come with a monastic perspective, but all individual perspectives as funds this practice of transit. In this particular class, we also have online, not her medium, we have had Wendy, so Martin, Wendy, and myself to offer a lay perspective. And I think it's very helpful to have different perspectives, because at the end of the day, our task is to find our own perspective, make our own sense of what makes sense. So the reflections that I offer really are very individual ones, they're personal. They don't come with any invested authority from a tradition. But I thought I'd read out this question, because it's quite long, but it's a good one. It's one I think that affects us lay people. We live in the world of conditions. The conditions we're experiencing now in society and the world are very thought-provoking. There's always a sense of change and disruption going on in the world, but it seems to have really all come to a head on so many fronts. And this question really addresses it. And it's a question, but it's a reflective question. So it goes into a reflection. It's a longer text. So what is the antidote to isms? And these are some reflections, thoughts about the future, perhaps worth thinking about. Where is humanity heading? In times where racism is a newsworthy topic yet again, whatever the news might be worth, Racism was always there and is not easy to overcome, along with all the other, also partly related isms in the world. How does the mind construct these? This employee will get a promotion because I like him or her. Favoritism. A man should get this job. Sexism. There should be a woman getting this job, although she is not the best qualified. Feminism. This is mine. Egoism. My view is the right one. Narcissism. You are inferior, I'm more important than others. Egotism. This list could go on and on, either related to racism or unrelated. And there we are. How does one get someone to change their view? How does one point out a wrong view? Even with these obvious wrongs, they're not wrong to the people who hold that view. Lying, deceiving, dishonesty, criticizing others but making the same mistakes. Newscasters who become entertainers. Issues and social networks that are untrue and lead astray. Have we lost our values? Can mankind or humankind see that we are heading in the wrong direction? Learning again what these values mean: ethics, morality, respect, virtue, self-restraint. Something that needs to go on the curriculum in schools. Attributes that have been lost since the revolution of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Are we at the threshold of a new revolution? Are we getting sick of a lifestyle without rules and regulations where anything goes? Are we finally beginning to see where our lifestyle is leading us? Did the COVID pandemic teach us anything? That it is not everybody for themselves? Was it a wake-up call? Or are we all going to crawl back into our comfort zones? I don't think and don't even attempt to change the world, but I try little steps in my immediate sphere of contact with others, little baby steps in the right direction, in formal practice, some of the people around me. Is that the right way? Or am I hiding from the challenge? So a very eloquent little summary of questions that many of us may have as well. How does one deal with the suffering of the world? There's one item I thought that was missing there actually when I thought about it, and that's climate, the environment, the big one where all this is happening. Yeah. Well, those are good questions. As lay people, what part are we playing in the world, in our society, in our lives? It certainly looks quite insurmountable, the problems that we're facing at the moment. So from a Buddhist perspective, we have to ask ourselves, where do we take our refuge? What sort of reference points do we have in our lives that help guide us through the multiplicity of points of views, of opinions, of rights and wrongs, of injustices? And I don't think there is a general answer that applies to everybody. Or perhaps there is, but it's very non-specific. I think our refuge has to start really with the principles espoused in the Five Precepts. As I said at the beginning of our meeting this evening, or our gathering this evening, the values we live our life by are critical in terms of the effect they have not only on ourselves, but on others. So on a very basic psychological, relational level, the precepts of the guidelines, that's where we take our refuge. what is the quality of our reaction, not just to these big issues, but in the small stuff of everyday life. Our Buddhist practice involves a commitment, not just to inquiry, but to cultivating wholesome states of mind. At the same time, we can't but be affected by the society we live in, by the people we share our lives with, by the society that we're exposed to every day. But there's another level of taking refuge. Yes. It's not just the teachings that we take refuge in. It's what the teachings are pointing to that we take refuge in, which is Dhamma, the way things are. Dhamma is essentially reality. And our purpose as human beings is to waken up to reality. That means accepting and understanding the conditions that we find ourselves in. Because only when we accept the conditions and the conditioned nature of the world that we're in, can we realistically influence it. So we're not looking for an ideology, some kind of belief system. Everything that we hear taught to us, good teachings, are about paying attention. Not just paying attention, but noticing our reaction to what we pay attention to. The path of transformation is to deal with our reactivity. There's a big difference between reactivity and the response. Reactivity is instinctive, it's fast, it's often unthought through. Whereas response can be more refined, more reflective. It can be informed by a perspective which isn't just one of like or dislike, but is more aligned with actually what one is perceiving. So when we see or experience suffering of others, we wouldn't be human if we didn't feel the suffering. But it requires insight and understanding to know how to respond to that suffering in a way that is appropriate to our circumstances, our conditions. And it's challenging because we feel the pain of others. But actually, what does the First Noble Truth point to? That there is suffering. Some problems can't be sorted, can't be solved. Some problems can. And each set of circumstances is quite unique. So we have to be very open-minded and not just be driven by ideals, but have those ideals tempered or informed by the truth, not only of the situation, but in fact of the characteristics of existence. One of the Buddha's first insights was seeing the cause and effect, not only in his own life, but in the lives of others. That everything that is the product of what was happening in the past, decisions taken in the past. This is all captured very explicitly in the Paticcasamuppada, the 12 links of origination, or just simply in the principle of cause and effect. When dealing with the suffering of the world as described in those questions, we're dealing with the conditioned world. And sometimes things are bad, sometimes things get better. At the moment, there's no doubt about it. Things are very bad on this planet. If we read what the scientists are telling us, and there are plenty of evidence, as a human race, we're destroying our environment. the environment that all life depends on. And in fact, our chance, the opportunity to rescue the world, prevent further destruction of natural life, of everything that supports our lifestyle, our existence as a human race, is under serious, serious threat. Many scientists believe that we're past the point of no return. This is unprecedented. We talk about the coronavirus being an unprecedented phenomenon. Well, actually, we have had plenty of plagues. They usually come around in 100-year cycles, and there's plenty of historical evidence of that. But this planet has never faced the danger that it's facing from human activity at the moment. This really is truly unprecedented. So we're living in very uncertain times. We don't know what the future will hold. But we do know enough to know that our very existence, the very existence of this planet as we know it, is threatened, mortally threatened. This is really a wake-up call for us, for the whole human race and for us as individuals. Quite what the outcome will be, I have no idea. Nobody can really know. Certainly the trends that our intellects observe, that the data points to, is not good at all. So we're going to be heading for rocky times. It's not as if humans haven't experienced rocky times before. The whole of history is a series of dramas, mass suffering, loss of life, but also beautiful things, transmission of beauty, of goodness in the fields of art, music, literature, and in human behavior. Our news quite naturally gravitates towards what's shocking, what's frightening, because it grabs attention. You don't hear much on the news about the Buddhist Monday Theravada night class, or life that goes on in monasteries, or the goodness, the little gestures of goodness that are taking place even as we speak, even as we sit here. But if we take refuge in the Dhamma, in reality, we realize that awareness is not about birth or death. It's not about the loss of loved ones. Dhamma is always now, as an ever-present reality in which we exist, we arise and we cease. I like to call this reality a sort of primary reality, only to discern the difference between primary, timeless reality, unconditioned reality, and the changing phenomena of conditioned reality. Because this timeless reality of the Dhamma contains the changing reality of everyday phenomena. And we as human beings are unique in being able to perceive, discern the difference between the two. It's all actually one, but in terms of pointing out, it's useful to discern the two. So we have this capacity to witness what we're observing and realize that what we're observing is not us, it's not I, me, or mine. It's a perspective which offers freedom, a freedom from suffering. It doesn't take away the suffering of physical existence. It doesn't take away the suffering that people experience. But it allows us to relate to that suffering in a way which actually allows us to accept it and be at peace with that suffering. Because all phenomena is changing, even this planet is changing as we speak. Our bodies are changing as we speak. Our thoughts are changing as we speak. It's a relentless process of anicca. And in that anicca is a pointer to freedom, because anicca also includes anatta, the impermanent nature of our sense of identity. If we bring awareness to ourselves, we can say quite confidently that I am. We all have this sense of I amness without exception. But if we examine what that I am actually consists of, what can we point to? We point to a sensation. How long does that sensation last? We can point to a feeling, a pleasant one or an unpleasant feeling. It may be there, but it just flows through and then it passes. We observe our mind, our thoughts, all the complex sankharas that arise in our consciousness. Constantly different. We go to bed one type of personality with all sorts of opinions, views, intentions, and we wake up the following morning. Are we the same person? All those determinations that we made the night before, where are they when the alarm clock goes at 5 o'clock in the morning because we decided to be inspired and wake up early and meditate? And we suddenly feel, no, roll over, pull the duvet over our head and get another hours of sleep. But what can we do in all of that? We can observe these changes. And our practice is to recognize that through all these comings and goings of different states of mind, there's a constant witness position. I don't even like to use the word witness because it creates an identity, but there's a witnessing. And longer practice reveals the fact that behind all activity, witnessing all this activity, there is a constant state of awareness. It requires no effort whatsoever. As we sit here, as you sit here listening to me speaking, it doesn't take any effort to notice what you're feeling. It doesn't take any effort to notice the physical sensations of the body, whether they're pleasant or unpleasant. It doesn't take any effort to notice your breathing, to notice that you're thinking, that you're hearing my words. No effort involved. This awareness is with us all the time. We call it our awareness. It's not our awareness. It doesn't belong to us. We arise in our awareness. Our awareness is a constant. So waking up to Dhamma is waking up to awareness. In later traditions, it's referred to as primordial awareness. I just like to call it primary awareness because it's always there. Specific sense sensations will arise depending on the conditions we find ourselves in. If we go outside and it's raining and it's wet, we experience the sensations of cold and wet. If the sun is hot, we experience the heat on our skin. If we like something, we say, I like it. But all that's happening is that a pleasant sensation has arisen, which has been labeled, I like it. You finish your ice cream, and the taste was good, and then it's gone. That's what happens all the time. Whatever we hold on to, and if we observe and witness, what are the implications of understanding this? We can notice how our minds are constantly running to pleasant states of mind. When we're sort of a little bit of a loose end, notice how the mind does a search. What can I do that's going to give me a bit of pleasure, that's going to be enjoyable? Is it going to be reading the paper, making a phone call? Or should I just go and do a look at some YouTube? Or listen to the news? Or perhaps I'll eat something. It's a constant search for some kind of pleasant sensation. It's a relentless activity, but it can be witnessed. And our practice is to witness it, but not be a victim of it. So it's allowing things to arise because it's natural. If one's hungry, one is hungry. If one's bored, one wants to fill space up, mental or emotional space. But we just don't have to act on it. That's where we develop our self-restraint. Not to punish ourselves, not to achieve some ideal of asceticism, but just to see how driven we are and how we can actually deal with that in a way that is wholesome and true, not going into denial into some idealized state of perfection. And when it comes to all the conditions asked, raised and covered by the question, yes, only we know in our own individual lives what we can do. Because if we're in a place of open-minded acceptance, one finds that the answer to what needs to be done will arise intuitively, spontaneously, if we are truthful to what we're feeling, to our intuition. So a combination of reflection as well as intuition, which means an integration of feeling, intuitive feeling, and reflective thinking, the right answer will emerge. If we deny that the planet is at risk, we're putting our heads in the sand. If we deny that racism exists, we're putting our heads in the sand. We have to examine all the subtle reactions we have to people who have a different skin color than we do, or come from a different tradition, or come from a different culture, or a different religion. We are full of biases. That's how the conditioned mind works. But if we practice awareness, by practicing cultivate awareness, pay attention, allow ourselves to savor what we're witnessing, what we're noting, and have a question mark over our assumptions, over our points of view, over our opinions. Put a question mark over them and take it to the heart. Is this good? Is it helpful? Is it kind? Is it truthful? Is it respectful? Does it recognize life as having a validity of its own in terms of having a right to exist? Am I being harmful or am I being harmless? Am I being generous or am I being selfish? The dilemmas of the world, yes, will not have a simple answer. But there is a simple answer. It's how we live our lives. And we may be moved to do all sorts of extraordinary things, to either vote for different people, perhaps help in a refuge, or help in a food bank. Just being nice and polite and kind to people that we might meet in our everyday lives. Because the world functions on many levels, and each one of us has our part to play in it. And we just start with the simple things of being kind, being helpful, being generous, as the first basic steps, which actually end up being ending steps, steps with their own brightness, their own completeness in the minutiae of everyday life. The little interactions with family and with friends, noticing those moments of irritation, observing them and not acting on them. This is all a path of purification. But the key thing to get hold of is this ability of ours to be aware of where we are, what's happening. Where is our life happening? That's the big question. So the specifics of the question can't be answered except by each one of us individually. There's enough publicity about the problems of the world to give us all the information we need. We just have to take responsibility for what we hear, what we know. The English word responsibility is a very beautiful word. It's made of two parts. Able to respond. What is my ability to respond? We can run away from responsibility, from our ability to respond, into a little bolt hole, little comfort zone of some kind or other. We can only be the best judges of that, and life will do the rest. There's a lovely saying I like from the Arab tradition, the Muslim tradition, which says, trust in Allah but don't forget to tie up your camel. In other words, take care of the small stuff, the stuff that you have can have some effect, can be helpful in. But the bigger picture, Dhamma itself, is a reality that we don't control. We are a part of that. So our practice is to realize the Dhamma, to become one with the Dhamma. So we come from a position of truth, respect and kindness. And from there will come the biggest contributions that we can make to the world. They may be humble, they may not make the history books, if we do have a history in 100 years' time to reflect back on these times. But at least there'll be a sense of having done the best that one can. And most of all, most importantly of all, to wake up to the characteristics of existence with an open heart and an open mind. So, I offer those reflections. I hope they're helpful. I know they don't answer the specific questions asked in the initial text that I read out. And I'm very grateful for it because I think it's very important to be aware of those issues. Most of us, I'm sure, are. But the beauty of this inquiry is that it actually goes to the heart of the problem, our very own nature, and the realization of what's real. So in the few minutes that we have left, we have about 10, 20 minutes, 15 minutes, not quite. I'm very happy to take any questions or hear any perspectives that some of you may wish to offer and share with us. We can either put it into chat or you can unmute. And if you have a question, please feel free to ask it, or if you want to share something, please do. If you want to raise your hand or unmute yourself, do feel free to do so.
Can I say something? Can I ask something?
Yes, please.
Where, all right, it is a bit silly, but where you stand on, we are Buddhist, but we are women Sakyadhita. We are Buddhist, but we are Black, so congregation of Black Buddhists in America, whatever it is, because it is emerging now. It is a bit fractious in a way. It is understandable.
Mm-hmm.
You got anything to say about that?
Well, I think we have to recognize that the history of Black people is one of incredible suffering. Certainly those who find themselves in the West as a result of the slave trade. My wife happens to be Black, so it's a dimension that I'm very aware of. And it's really quite horrendous when one reads what people went through. One has to read personal accounts. It's not an ideology. One has to relate to the intense suffering, the cruelty that people were subjected to. Human beings like you and I, with families, with lives, with likes and dislikes, preferences. But of course, the whole process of slavery is not something that's unique to whites against Blacks. Every civilization has exploited one lot of people there's been exploitation by one lot of people on another. The pyramids weren't built by happy, clappy laborers earning a lot of money every day. Incredible suffering. So we have to be respectful of where people are coming from. And if a group of Buddhists want to come together because of a sense of identity, that's very natural. We all go through an evolutionary process of identifying with a group. Hopefully the teachings that they expose themselves to will cultivate generosity and kindness and respect. But any group is likely to fall into an ideological stance and perspective on themselves, including the white group. We have cultural biases. The practice of awareness is about to put this into context, to understand why, if it does happen. But we have to follow our own intuitive sense as to what is right. But we have to be very careful when we're pointing critically at anything. Because when we point at anybody or anything, there are always three fingers pointing back at us. So our reaction to what we're experiencing is critical, because this is a practice of self-inquiry, of self-examination, and a real investigation. So if that group finds some benefit and mutual support in conditions that you and I probably find difficult to even comprehend, and it does them good, sadhu, let it be so. If they start preaching hatred, then I say, no sadhu.
Thank you.
Yeah. I wanted to mention two books that you might want to glance at. One is, I don't know how one gets hold of it actually, because I picked this up at Amaravati. It's a book by Ajahn Chah called Buddha Nature, Human Nature. It's a wonderful book, a wonderful integration of Buddhist thinking, Buddhist perspectives, but all related to the state of the planet and the environment. So it's called Buddha Nature, Human Nature by Ajahn Chah. It's actually available online, so you don't even have to have the book. There's always something nice about a physical book, I have to say. But the contents of it are really very sobering. And it addresses some of the sort of moral dilemmas, the challenges that we face. But it's also a lot of data, a lot of information that we need to know. Another book that appeared recently is called Our Final Warning, 6 Degrees of Climate Emergency. It's a very, very sobering, but very sound book. It basically explains very clearly what happens with every degree of warming on our planet and which way we're headed. So it's called 6 Degrees, Our Final Warning, 6 Degrees of Climate Emergency. We need to know about this because the decisions that we take, what we feed back into our conversations with others, the people we vote for, the projects that we support, all play a part, all play without exception a part in what's happening to our environment. Even if one has a pessimistic outlook, one shouldn't be then paralyzed and not do anything and be dismissive. We don't know the future, but we do know the present. And if we act by the principles that I've been expounding this evening in the present, then we're doing the best that we can. But it's important to be informed, because we can't say, I didn't know, because we do know. So I hope I haven't depressed anybody too much. I think having the balance right, you know, if one is overwhelmed by the situation we're in, stop listening. Cultivate a good heart. Practice well. There's no point in overloading ourselves with information that is fear-inducing. A certain degree of fear is good, but it has to be regulated so that it has a fruitful outcome. Yeah. We have to take responsibility for our mental states of mind. If we are very, very sensitive and feel very fragile, there is no point in exposing ourselves to all this information. It's far more important that we cultivate a sense of presence, of stillness, have time to practice, to examine and explore our moment-by-moment experience when nothing is happening, when we're not doing anything. It's important to be kind to people. It's important to cultivate positive qualities. Negative qualities do not benefit the world. There's enough negativity in the world. So cultivating, practicing right effort, essentially, is there in the Noble Path. What's that? Avoiding the arising of unwholesome states of mind. It's overcoming unwholesome states of mind. It's cultivating positive states of mind and maintaining positive states of mind. This isn't just positive thinking, happy, clappy thinking. It's just being a witness and an observer and a discerner of what is helpful, what is not helpful, what is wholesome, what is unwholesome. And it's cultivating the wholesome. It's not about creating a big cushion between oneself and existence, because we are all a part of existence. Everything that we manifest is a part of this one reality. But we are conscious in a way that other animals and beings are not. We have a reflective capacity, we have a memory, we have an imagination. So we have a lot of power. And to use that power skillfully is a practice of the heart. So we have to cultivate a wholesome heart so that the intuitive response to whatever we find ourselves is good and wholesome. So we have to learn how to regulate, and meditation is a form of regulation. Affect regulation, insight regulation. We have to become our own teachers with the help of pointers from other teachers. That's what Kalyanamitta is, having friends or teachers who point things out to us. And if we recognize, yes, I didn't know that, I need to learn that, we have to be grateful. That's certainly how I've been learning, and I see other people, they all have teachers. What's what made the Buddha exceptional? He had teachers, but he went beyond his teachers and came up with this incredible frame of reference of the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Noble Path, which contains the whole of the practice. You don't have to know the Pali Canon backwards. You just have to lead a good life and follow those basic core injunctions of the Buddha to find out for ourselves. Our evening sessions are very short, an hour and a half, not very much time. So I think we'll bring things to a close. It'd be nice to chant a closing chant. I really like the simplicity. Should we chant verses of sharing and aspiration on page 33? Because that really goes to this beautiful connection between our practice, yes, and sharing that practice. So if we go to page 33, and I will chant, and everybody else will be muted, so you can chant in the privacy of your living room, bathroom, or kitchen, wherever you may happen to be. Now let us chant the verses of sharing and aspiration. Through the goodness that arises from my practice, may my spiritual teachers and guides of great virtue, my mother, my father, and my relatives, the sun and the moon, and all virtuous leaders of the world, may the highest gods and evil forces, celestial beings, guardian spirits of the earth, and the Lord of death, may those who are friendly, indifferent, or hostile, may all beings receive the blessings of my life, may they soon attain the threefold bliss and realize the deathless. Through the goodness that arises from my practice, and through this act of sharing, may all desires and attachments quickly cease, and all harmful states of mind, until I realize Nibbana. In every kind of birth, may I have an upright mind. with mindfulness and wisdom, austerity and vigor. May the forces of delusion not take hold, nor weaken my resolve. The Buddha is my excellent refuge. Unsurpassed is the protection of the Dhamma. The solitary Buddha is my noble guide. The Sangha is my supreme support. Through the supreme power of all these, may darkness and delusion be dispelled. So that brings our evening to a close. We'll just do the closing homage on page 28. Before we do that closing homage, which will bring our class to an end, I just wanted to mention that next week, Ajahn Chah will be teaching on the 22nd. We then have Ajahn Chah on the 29th. Then we have, can't remember whether it's Martin or myself, but then Ajahn Chah will be teaching again on the 20th of July. I'd like to thank the Buddhist Society for hosting this class. It's very easy to get so many things downloaded or live streamed on the internet. But the Buddhist Society, just as Amaravati, is a physical institution and has expenses of maintaining buildings, paying probably nominal salaries, keeping the show on the road, council tax and all the rest of it. So I think every now and then it's good to remember that actually it's not just a question of being grateful, but expressing that thanks in the form of some financial contribution to help the show go on. You know, it plays a very important part, the Buddhist Society and the Buddhist world in England and the UK. It brings together all the traditions, respects them all, supports them all, and creates a venue for them to communicate the Dhamma in their particular tradition. You know, we're all part of the same world, and it's lovely to have an institution such as the Buddhist Society being a meeting place to dispense and share, enable this sharing to take place. So if we go to the closing homage on page 28, if you have a shrine, you can turn to the shrine and bow. If you want to bow, you don't have to. Araham Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddham Bhagavantam Abhivade Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammam Namasami Supatipanno Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Sangham Namami. Right. I'd like to thank Marlon for managing things in the background and providing us with the text on the right page. Thank you to Amina for joining us this evening and being ready to step in and stand in and help facilitate any questions. And I'd like to thank everybody else who has joined us this evening and to wish you all well and look forward to seeing you again. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.